Hello, how are you? Today, I am here to talk about the courage to be loved. This is really just going to be, I guess, a nice introspective, I suppose. Um, Nothing super scientific, mostly just anecdotal and kind of just talking about it conceptually. You know, I think the courage to be loved is something that is hard for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I don't think it's a one size fits all type of problem. And I feel like it might be interesting to talk about, or at least, listen to me ramble about it for a little while, right? So, the courage to be loved. What gave me the inspiration to talk about this is there's a short film YouTube video um, with that exact same title, The Courage to Be Loved. And I felt like it was a very, very worthwhile watch. It's very short, very worthwhile watch. And it, I think it does a very accurate job of, I guess, how that feels. I personally have never struggled with the courage to be loved, but I absolutely know people who have. And I appreciated the video because I think it was a very general look on it rather than approaching one specific reason why somebody may have this struggle. Um, but it made me think a lot about myself and my own experience with it. I personally am, it's been about 2 months. I'm coming out of a very long term relationship, right? Just over 4 years. I'd been with this person, and we both mutually chose to break up with each other. And we kind of had like the final boss issue of relationships where she's very much an avoidant and I'm very much a I don't know the proper term, but I guess a pursuer or a um somebody who's maybe a little too involved, right? Somebody who has a hard time taking the step back and being more hands off. And so obviously both these personality types very much clash with each other. And so it's always hard for the both of us because our instinctual, actions were always very counter what we wanted out of each other. And we were able to navigate this for obviously 4 years, but it slowly started to deteriorate over time due to many other different factors that just caused us to create distance over time and eventually just not see eye to eye anymore. But speaking on that relationship, um, kind of the struggles I had with or like being together, it was very much a I I mean I think a lot of men will probably relate to this, but like I just have a very hard time not being able to see a problem and not want to solve it, right? Very proactive person in and out of a relationship. And somebody who just wants to help and to solve problems. Um, so anytime there was ever an altercation between us, or even so much so just like something she would complain about or was struggling with, my immediate instinct was how do I fix this? How do I solve this? And I think for her that kind of startled her sometimes and made her want to pull back. And it's very gamified for a lot of men of like, how many problems can we solve? How many things can we fix? You start to kind of optimize your life, your relationship, your partner. And while it may be fun and feel very gamified, a lot of times partners don't necessarily appreciate that as much, especially if you have an avoidant type of partner. They definitely don't appreciate that as much. Something I'm learning, and something I will take with me to my future relationships that I'm learning. Um, For avoidance and for people who are afraid to be loved, um, it can come from a lot of different reasons. It can maybe come from a too much of a fear of one gender. So the really common one is women, whenever they're raised, are told to be vigilant around men. Be careful to watch, like don't walk at night. um, Make sure nobody's following you. I've even heard some stories that mothers will tell their daughters of like, make sure you check underneath your car. That way, somebody isn't hiding under your car who's gonna slash your Achilles so you can't run away. And it's like, like that's like there's definitely some truth and some value in being vigilant. Absolutely. I mean, it's staying safe, but also it can also get to a point of like being too afraid of men, or same with women, being too afraid of women. um, some of it too can also come from abuse, or can come from um, being treated poorly by one gender, um, at a young age or at a formative age, that causes you to have this fear to not be able to trust the other person. um, well, I think those are kind of obvious cases. The case that I feel like maybe most people struggle with, that's also the most difficult, is to just the not understanding how to be loved. In the case of my previous girlfriend, she was one of those people who didn't know how to be loved. And that's a common thing for people. It's especially avoidance. Um Not knowing how to be loved, not knowing how to accept love, not knowing then how to reciprocate the love. And it's difficult for relationships because relationships are built on the back of love, right? So if one person or another person is really struggling with love, it's difficult to have a relationship, right? Um, Now I say all of that, and I unfortunately don't have the answers. I mean, like, again, I've got thoughts, I've got ideas, but I don't have the answers. I especially think for people who, I think people who maybe suffered trauma at a formative age, that's probably a lot straighter of a path on, well, how do we resolve this past trauma? Or how do we learn to move past this? Or how do we learn to trust people? That's a very, I'd say, clear path. Whereas maybe somebody who just doesn't know how to properly accept and reciprocate love, there's not really a one size fit all solution to that. And I think that's what makes it hard for people. There's there's not a clear answer. I think the best thing, in my personal opinion, especially coming out of this relationship, um, and I think guys will probably struggle with this, but it's very, very important to, try, is to give the other person space to not try and prove yourself that you are the person that can be trusted, but rather showing the other person you can be trusted through actions. There's nothing to be gained through begging or through pleading or through even requesting, but to be the one that just is there, that shows up and does the right things. For avoidance, that's the safety there. They're looking to have the agency and the autonomy to be able to make that decision for themselves, not to follow through with somebody else's decision. And maybe that's not the case for everybody, but I think a really great way to visualize this is the princess in the castle trope. Um, So in this scenario, we'll take the princess, the girlfriend, the female person is the avoidant, and the male is the pursuer or the knight. And there's a woman, a princess, who is in a very, very tall Rapunzel like tower. And there's these big, big walls that keep her separated from the rest of the world. Those are her emotional walls. Those are um, her emotional walls, right? Um, her unwillingness to open up with others and to trust others. And the knight is the guy looking for looking for a female partner who can see the princess for all her beauty and wants to have that person in their life. But how do you meet with somebody who's so far away, trapped in a castle behind a big wall, right? I think a lot of guys who have this I need to fix mentality or I need to solve mentality, their first instinct is, well, how do I climb the wall? How do I scale the wall? How do I climb the tower and reach the princess? Because then there's this idea of like, well, if I can scale this monumental wall, I'm proving myself. Only a man as strong or as capable as me could scale a wall like this. Therefore, I am worthy. And the princess doesn't want that. All the all this does for the princess is makes her want to make her walls even taller and make her tower even higher. Um, Rather, the best thing to do is, as the knight, is to sit somewhere in in view of the castle's window where the princess can see you, but is at a very, very safe and comfortable distance away from the wall. And by you being able to enjoy yourself, be happy, show all the traits that women look for in men. And remember this, vice versa with gender, but the princess who can see the knight for all the traits that, this person would like, they're kind, they're nice to others, they're all these other favorable traits, right? Through the princess watching this person over time, will see the kindness, will see the comfort, and they will lower their own walls. They will come to you and they will at least break it down little by little. I think the final thing to note is these walls don't get broken in one good conversation. There's not going to be one moment where an avoidant will finally stop being truly avoidant, right? There will always be hesitancy. There will always be self doubt and questioning. It's a matter of slowly chipping away at it over time. Time is the most valuable and important asset to this equation because that's what trust is built off of. I mean, for somebody to be trustworthy for a week is much different than a person who's trustworthy over a month or a year or four, right? And so the longer you can display these positive qualities, the more that person's willing to open up. They're willing to trust and they're willing to maybe open the gate to that castle, right? That's my take on it. I guess I speak from the experience of my previous relationship. I well, I didn't do anything like this was a very mutual breakup and neither of us had negative feelings towards the other person doing it. There's definitely a lot of things that I learned after the fact through introspection that I was like, well, maybe I should have, stopped trying to optimize her life or optimize a relationship. And that's a lot deeper than that. And, not necessarily the scope of this conversation, but the courage to be loved, right? That's something that seems so simple and such a given to people who don't experience this reluctancy, but to those who do feel the reluctancy, they understand. It's a confusing mental battle where you don't know if somebody's I love you really means I love you, right? or you understand that it means I love you, but you're afraid of what's to come after, because just that first show of affection opens a door to more and more down the line. I mean, a handhold goes to a hug, goes to, kind words of affirmation, goes to who knows what, a kiss, a relationship, more. And so sometimes even just compliments feel intrusive, because I think for some people they feel like they're opening a door too quick because they're thinking of all the things that come after. Again, there's so much that goes into this. It isn't really a one size fits all, right? I think there's lots of nuance. The only truly universal part of this situation for anybody going through it or feeling it is the mental battle itself, the confusing, difficult feeling itself, the ache in the heart that can't really be healed by anything else, right? To be confused and to not know what to do, what's right or wrong, what the right decision is, that that does some serious emotional damage, and it's hard for people, especially whenever you think about what could be, what could have been. Um, I highly recommend checking out the video, "The Courage to Be Loved." It's a very good video. It's very short, and I think if people, I think if y'all who are watching this can relate to this conversation at all, will absolutely relate to this video, and at the very least will feel seen, right? I think maybe more so the best part of this video than anything is, while I don't necessarily have an answer, or I guess I have a little bit of advice, right? But I don't necessarily have a solve or a fix. What I do have is the ability to make other people feel seen. And if you feel seen listening to this, then know your struggles are valid and know your struggles are real. Everybody has their own battles and everyone has their own struggles, and all are to be respected regardless, big or small, right? Um, but yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about today. This is my first video on the channel, so I hope y'all enjoy this. I will respond to any and all comments if there are any, and I plan on doing similar videos to this. I also stream on Twitch. I don't have a regular schedule yet for streaming. I'm kind of just doing it starting at 9 o'clock to midnight, random nights, like 3 to 4 nights a week, but I'll eventually have a schedule. But for now, if you want to watch me talk, whatever, play games, have fun, absolutely come join me there. But yeah, I hope if this video is enjoyable, let's talk about it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.